It's an old biblical name, of course,
is.
Zephaniah. It's a
Yeah.
book in the Old Testament.
Yeah.
So the reality is, my father is very strong, faithful Christian man. My mother is a feather in the wind hippie, and they came together just long enough to bring me into this world. Mutually, they decided it wasn't right for them, but the name was strong and stout for my father, and the name was whimsical for my mother. So Zephaniah worked out for me, and I'll tell you what, as a child, it was a tough one to carry, but as an adult, man, it's a badge of honor. It's great to have this
Did you
name.
run into many other Zephaniahs in schools?
I have never met another Zephaniah in person, though I have searched them out in this new world of social media, and I found a good number of them. So,
Come on up. We're just getting started.
Recording.
Well, we're recording, but we're just getting started too. That's okay. Tell me, first of all, where are you from?
I grew up in the coast of Virginia, Williamsburg, Newport News. As a young youth, I was in Newport News, shipyard town, not a very wealthy family then. I lived in areas like this or a little bit rougher than this as a young child, and then was fortunate enough to move to Williamsburg and start to get some opportunity and see what it was like to live with services around me versus, an area that was struggling a little bit harder.
And what brought you to Anderson?
Anderson. So in my adult years, I started bouncing around a little bit, trying to figure out what I was doing with life. And I was fortunate enough to have a friend that said, I'm going to go to Clemson. Why don't you follow me? We'll go there. We'll start a landscaping company. It'll be great. So I went from Virginia area to parts of the Carolinas and then Rock Hill to here, where I then met my wife, or wife-to-be, not long after moving into the area. And we then gallivanted around, and she and I started having kids and decided it was time to come back with where family was.
Sure. So you get all kind of weird spellings and stuff.
That's true.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, you're in Anderson. You came to Clemson. You ended up back in Anderson. What got you interested in the Cleo Bailey School?
Well, I'm always looking at whatever venture is out there. Honestly, I mean, Whitney and I sort of have a dream of opening a coffee shop one day, a little quaint coffee shop, because everywhere we've moved and lived, those are the places we gravitate to, the little arts districts in town and the coffee shops. And I saw this place because I'm always looking. I mean, I'm not really always aggressively looking, but this came across. And I saw the courtyard out there and this building, and I was thinking, that's way bigger than what we need, but that's kind of neat. But as I kept looking here, it started morphing in a very different direction. It went from, hey, we could have a nice little coffee shop, to, oh my gosh, we could do something real with this building. We could do something good with this building. We could utilize all this space to help people that want to serve, and help those that need to be served get the services they need. And what initially was a project in one direction quickly turned into a project in another direction, and my heart got into it, and that's where I really started diving in.
Well, to add to that, I feel like you and I, in some form or another, have been looking for a project like this for a long time.
Yeah.
Like, ever since we met, really, and started kind of talking about our future and our dreams. And we definitely, part of the reason we wanted to do like the coffee shop, maybe even coffee shop by day, brewery at night kind of thing, is because we both love people, interacting with people, working with people, helping if we can. So I feel like this opportunity kind of gives us both the opportunity to serve and help others who want to serve, but work with people ultimately.
Yeah.
Connect with people.
Yeah.
So
So
give back.
Let's talk about the grand vision. Okay, you're talking about, you said you had one vision, it shifted. Let's just talk about the grand vision for this. And
all right, so I sort of laid it out a little bit there. The ultimate vision is still a living thing, because when we first came here, the plan was to get involved with some people in the community that have some contact in this community and find out what it is that would really serve their needs. Now, I grew up in an area like this, so I have some idea of what it's like when the breadwinner goes away with the car, and then who's left at home does not have a car. If you need to go get groceries, I mean, we would do a 2-mile walk to get groceries. grab the groceries, and then a 2-mile walk back home with those groceries. There isn't a grocery store very close to here, and it's pretty tough to do that without a car. It's a long hike, and usually it's with children, because I was one of the children as a kid carrying those groceries. So the thought of those services being brought to this facility was a great idea. The other side of that, though, is COVID hit. And when we were going to dive in with the local leaders around here, that sort of got put on hold. So the grand vision encompassing is a place to serve and a place to be served. I mean, if it falls under that, then we feel we're doing our part. As far as minute details, those are yet to be seen.
We talked about the community garden?
No, that's actually what led into the community garden. Because we were unable to meet with the members of the community and really dive in and find out what's right for them here in the facility, we started thinking about the fact that we do have limited resources. I mean, we put our life and our savings and everything into this building. We kind of just jumped off the deep end and just put it all here. Just knowing that it was the right thing for us to do. But with that being said, we had limited resources. So if we had X amount of dollars and we were to focus that indoors, we could do 100 square feet. We can take that same money and put it outside and do a grand thing. So we decided to, the first thing before we get the community involvement here, let's go ahead and build a community garden so that we could then generate food off of the land. When I was a kid, at the times that we didn't have enough, I never went hungry. I was very fortunate because I had a mother that would not let us go hungry. But I saw many nights where my mom went to bed hungry. And if I can do anything to keep that from being a part of a family's dynamic, I'm game. So that's where the community garden came into play.
So that's phase one.
That's phase one.
All right. So if you got a generous patron or benefactor somewhere, what would you do in here if you had the money to do what you wanted to do with the building?
Okay, so ultimately, again, it goes back to finding out what people need. But outside of that, if we could have a grocery store on the front end that could
Local, fresh produce.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Feed people some better food. I mean, you can go to the convenience store or you can go to Dollar General and you can get something wrapped in plastic that was processed and full of sugar. That's fully available to you here. What isn't available to you is something that's fresh. So if we could bring that to this community, that would be great.
We've also talked about a safe space for whether it's kids or adults to come in, maybe take some classes or tutoring.
Absolutely.
Again, we're trying to focus on, we need to have more connection and communication with the community to know what's needed, so we know what we want to bring in here. But we've definitely thrown around some ideas of what we could see maybe as useful, or
absolutely,
even office space.
An after-school program, a safe place for a child to come and get the tutoring that they need. See if we can get that funded and housed in here. Different classes, like Whitney was saying, some
Life
financial
skills,
planning classes, some life skills classes.
The library.
Yes. Anything that's going to help enrich someone's life. The word enrichment gets thrown around a lot here. Community enrichment, life enrichment. In my mind, there's this, you have to nourish if you want to flourish. Community garden, we're nourishing the body. How are we going to nourish the mind? How are we going to nourish even, I mean, as simple as financial planning. I mean, I had no clue about financial planning until I got a little bit older, but what if we can help people that are in a spot sit down and talk with someone and figure that kind of stuff out? If we had those services all housed in this building, that would be great.
Help with employment as well.
Absolutely. So Whitney does that actually for a living. She's a vocational rehabilitative counselor, and she helps people find employment and get the skills they need to be employed.
Well, before we go too much further, let's talk about the garden a little bit.
Okay.
That's you said you're landscape architecture major, so that plays to your strength.
Yes.
What are y'all going to do with the garden here? Tell me about the garden.
So the garden, the focus that we're trying to do here is some restorative or regenerative gardening. as we'll look and see out there, we have massive piles of wood chips. Those have been lovingly donated to us from different tree services in the area. Athens Tree Service, Asplin, they've just been coming here because it's convenient for them to dump, but it's a benefit for us. So this soil out here, it's a mess. It's really bad, it's really dry. It's just red clay that doesn't offer much as in the form of nutrients to the plants. So there's sort of a metaphor going on here where we're doing a regenerative and restorative gardening practice where we're rebuilding the soil in minute ways to get it to the point to where it's healthy again. Same thought is going to be brought into the school, regenerative and restorative. Where it makes sense to regenerate and restore, we will. Where it doesn't, we'll rebuild. But the community garden, so for the time being, I know that we're not going to get much production out of the grounds as they stand. So I wanted to get something going a little bit faster. So we got the community involved, and people really stood behind us. They started funding. We did a funding program on Facebook, and man, just people just started just blessing us. And we got the funding we needed to build 14 large raised beds out there. These raised beds, if we do a certain method of gardening, we could feed about 35 people consistently out of those beds. And that is going to be the initial point to where the food is growing while we restore the grounds so that they're able to support the food.
So next year probably your
Next year will probably be the first year where we bring certain plants in that can handle the atmosphere, the environment that's there. And then as time progresses, the next year we'll bring in a little bit more sensitive plants that are more productive, that will give us a different food. And honestly, it takes about 5 years to truly bring soil health back. And at that point, we can start to see a large variety of foods that can feed people.
And you mentioned the community. You've had a lot of volunteers. You've had work days and stuff.
Yeah, we sure have.
Volunteer.
Yeah. So we've been trying to keep it somewhat low key. We're in a world of pandemic right now. We do not want to be irresponsible with our time. We don't want to be irresponsible with people coming out here. So we're trying to be safe in ways that we can, try to keep ourselves outside so that we're distanced. But my goodness, so many people have offered their time, their energy, their money, their resources. Yes, their different skill sets. I mean, we have so many people in this community that I told them about the community garden. They were like, well, it's not really my skill set. So when you need something else, come and get me. And we've mentioned, well, we need this, that, and the other. And it's their profession or their craft or their hobby, and they've donated that time to bring that to the table as well, or told us to keep them in mind when that time comes. I mean, we've met with an architect who's donating his time. We're meeting this Monday with Mushroom Mountain, Trad out there. He is going to give us some advice on bringing fungus into our production here to help us with the farm. I mean, just people are just blessing us. They're giving, and it's pretty neat.
You mentioned architect. Are the bones pretty good of this building?
I've had 2 contractors in here, and the bones are very good. The infrastructure, the wiring, the plumbing, all that stuff has pretty well been gutted or not so good. Now, we do have a portion of the building up in the right front wing right up here that had a fire years ago. And that fire damage has weakened the bones, and we desperately need to get that dried in. We've had such a rainy spring that water infiltration has been so vast that it's actually decaying in front of our eyes. So we desperately need to get that dried in as quickly as we possibly can. Most of this building is gorgeous. You walk under here and there's these large hewn logs that came directly from the mill. I mean, it's just 1913 construction at its greatest. But there are some areas where there's been water infiltration, and where water comes, rot comes. But I'd say we're probably looking at 10 to 15% of the building that's going to need that kind of attention. The rest of it, I mean, it's very solid floors. It's very structurally sound.
Hey, have you put together a list of things and priorities that you need and skill sets you need and
we have been working on that. We
growing
have
every day.
So before we publish that, we're still trying to find an individual that can really help us out with the website building. And in that, give them that list and help us find those people and make it so that that list, as it gets filled up, or people see the skill sets that we need, we can check off those boxes and then focus on some other things. So trying to do it on Facebook is not really a platform that allows it. Facebook's the easiest thing at this very moment, and we've only been in this for 2.5 or 3 months. I mean, we just got started.
Right when COVID hit.
Yeah, exactly.
So you need somebody to donate time to do the website.
Absolutely, that would be very helpful for us right
Yeah.
now.
Okay. What about, you said you're talking about getting the community invested. What's the community response been so far? Have you talked to very many people living around here? Or?
We've talked to a few, and we've had some people come by as we're working and just kind of ask questions. And I mean, from my understanding so far, it's been pretty positive.
It really has, yeah. Yeah, we've met Tony Stewart, the councilman, who lives in the area and he drove by and then reached out to me. I reached out to him, and then he just happened to come by. I've met multiple neighbors, though I'm still trying to keep my distance. I'm someone that wants to go up and grab someone's hand and talk to them. We've kept that distance, and when people walk by with their family, I go ahead and just leave them alone. Typically, I would engage them as quickly as I could. But even with that limited engagement, we have met certain individuals in this community, and it's been a very positive response thus far.
A lot of people who have not been down here in a while, the only thing they know about this side of town is this is where the original Skin Thrashers was. And when you
Yes,
try to
sir.
tell people where Cleo Bailey School is, you know
Skid's
where
right there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Have you talked to them about?
I haven't talked to them about it. I've talked to one of the employees who walked by and said,
Yeah.
"Hey, are y'all finally tearing that down?" I said, "We're rebuilding it." He said, "Yeah." So no, we haven't delved in with
Maybe
it
they'll
yet.
come out here for a fundraising event,
Yeah.
offer up
Yeah.
some hot dogs.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, that's a good plan. What else do we need to tell people? What do people need to know about this when they drive by, when they see this? What do they need to know?
So we know that there's a lot of giving hearts in Anderson, and we do not want to take from the resources where people are already giving. We've spoken to the individuals out of the Lot Project. They're doing great things. So a big focus on ours here is to find out what is actually happening in the community and not overlap it. Because
How we can
do-
work together.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We don't want to take from their resources. We don't want people to divert their energies to us. We want to fill the gaps that they may not hit, and work symbiotically with them as opposed to competition with them.
I know definitely in the field that I work in, there is a huge need in Anderson, just for services across the board. But so I know that there's a way to do just that, to work together to, because I mean,
That's what you
I'm,
do.
right? And I'm in contact with those organizations, and they're, we're all desperate for volunteers just to continue to serve those who need the resources. So it's exciting to be a part of that, I think. And it's cool because I grew up in Anderson, and I didn't think I would come back to Anderson, but now that we're here, it's just been really neat to connect with the community in this way and see how the connections I made growing up as a child, I don't know, are all kind of like coming full circle now. Like, just to be able to give back to the community, and especially working with a lot of low-income families, seeing what they need and then being able to actually do something where I feel like we might be able to make a difference, like offer a place that's accessible or offer services that are accessible if they don't have transportation or if they have those needs. So it's exciting.
Well, I know, of course, it's divided up. You see, basically once you cross, you're on the west side, suddenly it's a different,
Yes.
and this is the east side gets forgotten, and I think this community feels forgotten
Yeah, absolutely.
because the west side is a little more blended with the rest of the west side, except for the lake people, obviously, super wealthy people who came in.
Right.
But the east side has always been sort of small and sort of forgotten, and they're the ones that have been bussed around to keep the school districts, honest and stuff. And then this community seems to just, the disadvantaged folks here at times just passed by. Nobody really is focused on the east side. That's why I'm sort of interested in talking to you guys about.
Absolutely. So one of the things that I've noticed, and I've mentioned this word multiple times, is underserved. I just feel like this community is vastly underserved. The services aren't here. When I was walking around, and I don't want to throw our city under the bus. They do what they can with the resources that they have. There are great people that are running this city. But when I first came here, I looked at all the gutters around the street, where the curb meets the road, and they're just absolutely full of soil, and grass is growing everywhere, and it's not maintained.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, if I was a kid living in this neighborhood, I mean, it would drag down your pride in your neighborhood and your desire to do good in your yard if the rest of the place just looks underserved, uncared for. So one of the initiatives that we have is a street cleanup project, where the goal is to go around this building and get it cleaned up to the point to where we feel like it's a point of pride. And as time progresses and the volunteers are available to do some projects with us, we'd like to emanate that out into the community. Pick a couple of homes, pick a corridor where people walk, and clean it all up. Trim the trees back, get the grasses cleaned up, and make it so that it's a place that you actually want to walk around.
Yeah, and this obviously, I'm going to edit this a lot, and I'll
Yes,
put
sir,
this in, but you're not seeing that same level of non-service in the better sections of town, the
Absolutely.
wealthier sections.
Right.
They allow their curbs to get dirty and
Never.
Right, exactly.
stuff to be dumped and left there for
Right.
3 weeks. And
Right.
And you have multiple sides of that. You have the community members that they see how it is and they leave it that way. And then you have the city not responding to it. So there's both sides taking part in that. And if you see that the city's kept it clean and you're mowing your lawn, you go out there and you blow the grass off the sidewalk. I mean, there's a symbiotic relationship there as well. So if we can kickstart that here. There's another initiative that's going on right now. When I was boarding up some windows to try to secure the building and make it a little bit safer, because we don't want people coming in here and getting hurt. I was boarding up these windows and I was thinking, this is blight. This is absolute blight. A building with boarded windows is blight. So I started thinking, why don't I open it up for arts projects on these windows? And that way, until we have the money and funding to put windows in, we have something aesthetically pleasing. So I put that out to the community. There was a lot of good response. And then I had an individual that I got in contact with who's actually a curator. And he's been doing this in San Diego and Atlanta and building these arts programs in different cities and communities, and has been doing a great job. So he's actually involved now, and he's taking the bull by the horns. Mm-hmm. He's working to get together a program where there's actually some jurors from the community that will vote on the artists that are allowed to do the art. And I've given him the front of the building to do all of that. After we've gotten that established, I think I'm still going to open it up to the community, the local artists, to do work on all these other, because there's only about 178 windows here, so we're limited on space. But so we're going to have our main showpieces up front, and we're going to hopefully have it as a year-round program or an annual program where that art then gets auctioned off or brought into the building, and then we have new artists fulfill that space again. In his efforts, he's looking at getting a prominent judge as well, so that the artists can feel like when they do this, they're putting forth their time. You don't want to ask an artist to work for free. But if they can build their portfolio with it by being voted in by a prominent judge, it can help them. So we're trying to make it so that, yes, we're getting donations from artists, but they're also going to get something out of it. That also feeds into the website. We want it to be a place where the artists can have a showcase on our website, show off their portfolio, so that it's not just so much take, but some give.
And I guess is he working with a local art center here? Or
he has. He's already reached out to them, and I mean he's.
Well, I know again they're like y'all with COVID, everything. The camps are all shut down, so the kids aren't doing anything like they normally would have.
Absolutely.
But yeah. Well, this building has really managed to avoid being tagged, and a lot of things some of the other ones are clobbered with. I'm surprised it's as clean as it is.
Right. Yeah, we were too, and so are the contractors. I've got a contractor that I'm working with that's. He owns several old buildings. He's very excited about these older buildings. And when he came in here, he was just blown away at exactly what you're saying, how clean it is, how limited the damage is. I mean, I walk around, I just see damage everywhere, and he's like, no, this is great. This is in good shape.
Yeah.
So. And how many former students have you talked to that are excited about this?
Probably about a dozen. It really hasn't flourished all that well, but there's been about a dozen. I would like to see many more because, I mean, every year is another group of students, and I mean,
Well, and also the word's getting out there because more and more are gradually reaching out, but because we're mainly on Facebook, not sure how much of that population is necessarily
super active
right
on Facebook.
Yeah. And seeing.
It's a long haul. People don't understand how change takes time.
Absolutely.
Speaking of needs, if you know anybody, I'm guessing you probably do, being in the world you're in, anyone who's excited about content creation and wanting to do it for a passion and not for an income for the time being. I'm into content creation, but I'm also the sweaty guy.
Yeah.
So to stop and to pull out my nice gear
right
to shoot everybody doing what they're doing and set up my camera and set up multiple cameras, it's not really working out. So I'm doing a lot of phone content, and that's not so great. I mean, it's all right. It's going to be on our Facebook. Yeah.
The Cleo Bailey experiment.
Yes. Yep.
I'm glad you kept the name of the school and everything in there.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
yes, and I can't wait to take that old sign down, polish it up, and put it back. I mean, I'm just so happy that they named the school after Miss Cleo Bailey, and I want that to be a big part of what we're doing. I was thinking about getting someone to put together a sign for us. I've got an individual to put together a sign that says established 1913, reestablished 2020. I think that might be neat.
Yeah.
When it was established, this was a nice part of town. People forget this was the edge of downtown, and just sort of.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's changed a bit.
We can bring some of that back.
And it blows my mind. When I first came here, I mean, I was looking on tax documents, and you can see all the ownership of these homes here, and it's the owner doesn't live there, so there's a lot of rental properties. But then once we actually came out here, people own these properties, but they're vacant. I mean, there's so many vacant properties out here. I mean, I thought it was going to be somewhat teeming with life, low income.
Yeah.
It's affordable. I mean, there's so many properties out here that just don't have anybody living in them. And the idea is we want to elevate this community without eliminating the people from the community. So often when we come in and we have this great idea and we bring in resources, we build up the community, and then the tax revenue starts to go up, and then the landlords start to raise the rent, and the dynamics change completely, and those who you came to serve are gone because they can't afford to live here anymore. So a big push is, again, I mean, I like these little key phrases, but elevate but not eliminate. If we can somehow accomplish that, and that again goes back to the name that we have right now. It's not the Cleo Bailey School, it's the Cleo Bailey experiment. There's an experiment going on here to see if we can actually accomplish good without eliminating people from the neighborhood. Yes, that courtyard out there is amazing. I mean, I love having that space. I love an aerial view. You see that, and it's just so cool. We're actually, we know that funding is going to have to be raised here. This funding, we're looking at community involvement, so it's community sponsored to support the community. That's the way it has to be to
the
make
fact that
this
they did
the project that
courtyards
we want
in
it to be,
schools at
because
one
we want
time is-
people actually tied in and having a sense of ownership of it. So we have to have that community support. Those take events. So the thought here is with these garden beds that we see out here, there's arches over top of them. That arch is going to be a big path that leads down to a green space out in the backside here. The cafeteria, the room that we walked in to start with, is going to be opened up. So we're going to have roll-up doors that just open up into that space, and then it's going to lead straight into the courtyard. So it's going to be segmented but contiguous open space for entertainment purposes, so that we can do some fundraisers out here. So pretty excited about that.
And tell me why you decided to get involved in this project out here at Cleo Bailey Experience.
So I was actually tagged in a post about them doing this project because I'm looking to start a different nonprofit, and they hooked me up with Zeph, and they said you should come check it out. And I was just kind of looking through everything they were doing, and the idea of being able to feed a bunch of different families real easily, giving families the power to actually grow their own food, and then the unbelievable amount of stuff we'll be able to do inside the building once that gets going. It was a really exciting idea to me. I love trying to give back and do some stuff for the community, and that how this is going to so directly and easily help this community is just awesome to me. So I figured I got some free time right now, like everyone else does, so I could come on out and do some work.
How do you think we can help get the community more involved in this?
A lot of it's going to happen when we open back up, starting to have those town hall meetings, starting to really reach out to them, and even if it comes down to putting up signs around the community, going to the churches and letting them know what we're doing, and ask them to come out and tell us what they need in the community so we can try to make it happen.
So a few reasons I decided to volunteer. First of all, the people that bought the Cleo Bailey are really good friends of mine, and I always want to help them out any way that I can. And secondly, that part of town does not have a lot of community service or projects going on, and I'm glad to help out in any way I can. Right now, one of the projects that they're working on are community gardens, and gardening and fresh food is sort of a passion of mine and has been for a long time anyway.
If people don't know you, tell everybody who you are.
Okay, I'm Jim Phillips. I'm from Greenville. Went to school here from 1949 to 1955. Had an older brother 1 year ahead of me. He was a year ahead of me, so he was on the same path. I hoped he would come with me today, but he couldn't come. But anyway, we lived here. I lived right beside the school on Whitner Street in the corner there, and also lived down the street. So we lived in this neighborhood that whole time up until 1955, and then we moved. My dad changed jobs, and we went to Spartanburg and Atlanta, Douglasville, Georgia, and Greenville.
What do you remember about going to school here?
Well, it was all good. I'll say that. And Miss Cleo was, she was quite a character, and my mother knew her, and we even went out to her house at times. But she was the school. I mean, that's what East Whitner was what it's called then. Then it's Cleo Bailey, I think. But she was what made the school. Fantastic lady.
Now, did you have her as a teacher, or you just knew her?
No, I had. She didn't teach. She was strictly the principal.
Oh, okay.
And the things that I remember about the school, first of all, Miss Cleo, she had a little assistant. His name was Martin McAllister, and he was probably 17, 18 years old. But I think he came to school here and never left. So he was kind of her mascot, but that was kind of unique, I thought. I'd never seen that before.
What grades was the school when you were here?
First through sixth.
Okay.
So I started in the first grade, and when we got through the sixth grade, then we moved out of town. And I lost contact with most of the people, but I had a lot of cousins. I had cousins that lived all over here, and aunts and uncles, and so we were just kind of part of the community. But after 1955, it kind of started going.
Yeah, this used to be a really vibrant community part of town, didn't it?
As far as I know. I mean, I was young, but we would walk to town on Saturday morning, go to the movies, carry our 6 bottle caps, and go to the State Theater, but that was life. And the school was the other part of it that it just made, it was just something, of course, living next to the school. And one of the things I do remember is that my dad, he was big into television. He went to the 1939 World's Fair, and he saw TV for the first time. So we had probably one of the first TVs in Anderson. And he had the biggest you could buy, had a motorized antenna. But they would send me home from school when they were doing the atomic bomb test. And I'd go home, watch it on TV, and then come back to the school and tell everybody what it looked like. Of course, all I said was a mushroom, probably.
Did you have a favorite teacher? Do you remember?
None of them were favorites. They were all my favorites. But I had just the list of them. I had Mrs. Graham, Mrs. Patterson, Mrs. Wyatt. Miss Ellison was a young teacher just out of college. I had Amanda Hill in the 5th grade, and she actually taught my mom. And then Mrs. Gaines, she had a split class. It was half 5th and half 6th grade. And she kind of encouraged me to do some things that I probably never would have done, but I loved to draw. And she'd have me draw these things on the blackboard because half the time she was teaching the 5th grade. When she was teaching the class, she'd have me draw these things on the board. Other teachers saw it, so I kind of became a touring artist. And I'd go around the school and draw during the holidays, draw pictures for everybody. So that kind of put me on a path, I think, that I'm eventually carried all the way through life. And I went to Clemson, became an architect, and done that my whole life. So been drawing the whole time.
That's very interesting. It's amazing what kind of influence a teacher can have.
Oh, it is. And there's a boy that lived up the street from us. His name was Lucius Cook. Lucius could draw better than anybody. He eventually went to California. I don't know what he did, if it's anything related to his art skills, but I always wanted to be like Lucius, so I guess that's probably what put me on that path. So it was.
What did you think when you heard somebody had bought the school and was going to do it as a community center?
I said good for them, because it's been a long time since I've been by, but over the years I used to do work in Anderson. Every time I'd come to Anderson, I'd drive down Whitner Street, look at the school. And my brother, in fact, when it was for sale, he said he debated whether to buy the school because of our, I guess, love for it. But, you know, that never happened, obviously. And then saw where the front, I don't know what happened, they burned, there was a fire there or something. But anybody that would do what Zeb's doing, Zephaniah, I think it's fantastic. It puts life back into the community. Of course, I like buildings, and this is the one building that probably impressed me more than anything, because it's really the first exposure I had. We went to Riverside Baptist Church. Of course, this road by there, it's still very much like it is. So it's amazing that these buildings and this community have survived just as I knew it. The houses, they've changed a little bit, but all in all, it's still intact. The fact it's survived this long, to me, is an amazing thing. And I'm glad to see it, and what he's doing, I cheer him on.